And we'll start with Luke Bovens telling us something about the affirmative action debates.
Thank you. That's right.
Are you going to use the remote?
Yeah, that might be good. So it's an hour and 5 minutes, right?
Say again?
An hour and 5 minutes, right?
Minus 15.
Minus 50. All right. 50 minutes. So 55. Great. Good. And so the remote is somewhere?
I just put it next to the other.
Right. Doesn't seem to work.
Oh, it should.
Oh yeah, there we go. Wrong direction. All right, terrific. So thanks very much for the invitation, Raphael and gentlemen. So when the invitation came, it came with a clause saying that I had to do something of practical relevance. So I thought it would be nice to do something, sort of practical relevance in the sense that it had some sort of political implications and so on, right? But now when I look at the titles, I'm sort of worried that, if you do a logic conference where the practical relevance means that it's got to be relevant to number theory or something, right? But this is really something with, political relevance, I would say. The title has changed a little bit, specifically for this conference, because when I looked at the other titles, I got kind of worried. And I thought it would be good to add, is stuck in the first moment, right? Now, what's the first moment, the expectation, and so on. You'll see what that was, all right? But at least there's a little bit of a technical flavor about it. All right. So here's what I'm going to be worrying about. And you'll see where the Bayesianism, comes up around the corner. There's something called the Equality Act 2010 in the UK. And there's a section 159, which is about positive action. And positive action is just, the UK name for affirmative action, all right? And this is all relevant to recruitment and promotion. And it's quite restrictive, actually, when you compare it to what's going on in the US. I don't know what's going on in the rest of Europe. But here we go. Here is a bit, this is not literal quote, because I want to spare you the literal quote. It's really lots of legalese. But that's sort of roughly what it says. So if an employer reasonably thinks that there is underrepresentation of PC people. Now, PC people these are protected categories, all right? So, we're talking religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and so on and so on. So if there's underrepresentation, right, that's relevant because, it's often about, especially in the States, we talk about reparations for past injustice, right? Now, this is underrepresentation of PC people in an activity, right? Then that employer is permitted, is not obligated, but is permitted to take the following action, right? With the aim to enable or encourage more PC people to participate in the activity, that's the goal. We want more protected category people to participate in that activity. And what can they do? They can provide more favorable treatment to these PC people. And in matters of recruitment, also in matters of promotion, but we're just going to look at recruitment, all right? And that is permitted, and this is the important clause here, only if that PC person X is as qualified as that non-PC person. All right? So, your PC person is a woman, is a Muslim, is disabled, all right? And you can fill in the non-PC person. Now, you can do something special for them, but only if the two people are as qualified as each other. Otherwise, you're not allowed to do anything hugely restrictive. So, as qualified as, what you do then in the UK to fill all of that in is you look at the parliamentary debates, that's what's going on in committee stage, to fill all that legalese in. And then there is always, a little booklet that gives practical advice for people who are making decisions about these issues. And so you find things, kind of spelled out a little bit in more detail. So the recruitment of an underrepresented PC person of equal merit is permitted. Yeah? Same thing as qualified as, just filling it in. So the clause can be invoked only as a tiebreaker or as a tipping point. Yeah? Will all means the same thing. Yeah? All right, it does not permit an employer to recruit, and this is actually a quote from something that was said at committee stage in the House of Lords, Baroness Royal of Playston. Clause 158, it's in the meantime it's become 159, don't worry about that, does not permit an employer to recruit or promote a candidate who is less qualified, not allowed, than another, just because the employer wants to address disadvantage or underrepresentation. And then she says, in any event, this would not make business sense. And we'll be playing with that. Does it make business sense to do something like that? All right. Bit more here. Here is your Equality Act. What do I need to know? Quick startup guide. And that's where you get the goodies, actually, to interpret all the legalese. Now, this is where I started scratching my head. When is this going to be invoked? Well, it says positive action can be invoked at any time in promotion or recruitment process. At any time. And what does that mean? Well, we were just in the process of constructing a shortlist for a job a couple of months ago. And so we were wondering, what happens at shortlist stage, right? What are the constraints at shortlist stage? And this guide actually is very, very specific about that. It says, suppose that you got a huge shortlist of 20 people. That's what we're going to be setting up, all right? Then what you need to do is you look at all the candidates, 200 candidates, you rank them all, right? You rank them all, and then you say, okay, there we go, number 1 has a spot, number 2 has a spot, number 3 has a spot, and so on. So you keep going, and you get to number 19, and there you are. Number 20 and number 21 happen to be equally qualified. Then what you're allowed to do is take a look and see whether one of them is a PC candidate. Yeah? Religion, gender, sexual orientation, whatever. Then you're allowed to see whether one of them is a PC candidate, and if they're equally qualified, then you can say, okay, PC candidate, you get spot number 20, and the other person can walk, doesn't make it to the shortlist. All right? So it's very clear about what needs to be done for shortlist construction. And then there is a bit of talk too about, doing anything else would be unfair and so on. So that's the story. Now, of course, when you're shortlisting, then we know that there is uncertainty about the quality of the candidate, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be shortlisting, that's the whole point. And then you want to take a really good look at shortlist stage, what the candidate is really all about. And once you start interviewing and so on, then the idea is that we're going to reduce that uncertainty. Yeah? Now we're going to start working a bit on setting up a model here of this whole process. Yeah? Now, the first thing I want to do is I just want to have single dimensional quality. Yeah? Now you say, oh, there's different dimensions that come into, into hiring. Yeah, fair enough. But we've already done some kind of aggregation somehow. So you have people ranked on single dimension. That's the idea. And then what we're going to do is at shortlist stage, there's going to be uncertainty, right? And as good Bayesians, we're going to represent that by credence function. And then what's going to happen is that at interviewing stage, you will reveal the true value of the candidate on this measure here, on this single dimensional measure. And now we're going to have to figure out, what are we going to do at shortlist stage, right? So that's the way things are set up. Now you can say that's not realistic. Yeah, but we can do aggregation here. And anyway, when you look at the text, that's always how they're talking. There is like this, somebody is a 61 and somebody is a 98 and so on, single dimensions, all right? And then you can say, yeah, but even after interviewing there's uncertainty. Yeah, fair enough, but you reduce the uncertainty. So for the modeling sake, we're going to, suppose that the uncertainty is gone. All right. And then, of course, we can talk about, do you really have this credence function? All right, we'll actually get to that in some of the objections. Okay, so here we go. And what I'm going to try to show is that at shortlisting stage, it doesn't make any sense to look at, here is the best, here is a ranking of the candidates, right? And then you just peel them off from the top. It doesn't make any sense to do that. Now, the 3 candidates, let's suppose we have 6 candidates. The first 3 candidates are straight 8s. So I'm going to have this measure, I'm just going to do it in a discrete way, all right? I'm going to have this measure from 1 to 10, all right? And the first candidate, candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, they're all these 3 candidates are just 8s. We're certain about that. If you say, I thought there was going to be uncertainty, okay, a little bit here and a little bit there if you want to, whatever, it doesn't matter, all right? These are pretty firm 8s, these first 3. All right. The second candidates, D, E, and F, that's where the uncertainty comes in. So you say, here's my credence function. You say 0.20 chance that it's a 7, 0.70 chance that it's an 8, 0.10 chance that it's a 9. That's what D, E, and F are like, right? Now, I got 6 candidates, and I got 3 spots on my shortlist. Who should I take? Right? Now it seems to me that if I follow the guide and I follow the Equality Act, I say, well, the better candidates, they should get a spot. All right? And who are the better candidates? Well, I've got uncertainty here, but of course there's no problem because I can calculate the expectation. Yeah? So I calculate the expectation, and these 3 candidates, D, E, and F, they're all 7.9s. Right? That's what comes out when you calculate the expectation. So following the Equality Act, what I should do is I should take A, B, and C in my 3 spots, and I should tell D, E, and F to walk. Right? Because these are 8s, and the other guys are 7.9s. Right? And now, of course, you already smell the rat, because that's a stupid thing to do. Why is it a stupid thing to do? Because what you care about is you want to maximize the quality of the ultimate hire that you're going to make. That's what you care about. Okay? And if you put A, B, and C following the Equality Act into your shortlist, then of course the quality of your candidate will be an 8. Yeah, that will be an 8. So that's your expectation of the quality of your hire. Just a second. Yeah. Now what about D, E, and F? Yeah, that's the one that we need. Here's the expectation of the quality of your hire. It's going to be an 8. Okay? That's straightforward. What about D, E, and F? Well, there we're going to do a little bit of calculation. All right? When are you going to be hiring a 9? Well, when there's at least one when there's at least one 9 amongst these 3 candidates. So you calculate your chance of having at least one 9. When are you going to hire a 7? Well, when you're stuck with 2 7s, you're unlucky. So what's your chance of having 2 7s? When are you going to be hiring an 8? or when you're not hiring a 7 or a 9. So that's how you straightforwardly calculate your chances of where your hire is going to go to, what the quality of your hire will be. So there you got your chances. 0.271 for the 9, 0.721 for the 8, and 0.008 for the 7. All right? And then, of course, what you do is you got those chances and you calculate the expectation. The expectation, 0.271 times 9, plus 7.721 times 8, and so on. Right? And look what your expectation is. Your expectation is 8.26. That's better than your expectation of putting A, B, and C in your short list. That was just 8, right? So, there we go. Here you got it visually, all right? This is your credence about what the quality of the hire is going to be. Unlikely to be a 7, chances for the 9, chances for the 8. You calculate your expectation, and your expectation is better. Now, if I were the employer, I would say, let's put D, E, and F in the short list, all right? And furthermore, I would say to the Baroness, you know what? That's what makes business sense. Because even as a hardcore libertarian, I don't care about any of this do-gooding affirmative action stuff. As a hardcore libertarian, I'm going to do what makes business sense, all right? I'm going to put D, E, and F in the short list. Yeah, but they got a lower expectation. I don't care. The quality of the hire is all that I care about, all right? So that's the story. Counter to the Equality Act, listen, there is uncertainty at the shortlisting stage. Now you can rank your candidates on the expected quality at the shortlisting stage. You can do that, okay? But the thing is, it doesn't make any business sense to just take the top on that expected quality. What makes business sense is to take the procedure that procures the highest expected quality for your hire. That's what makes business sense. So counter to the Equality Act, it may be the case that we ought to shortlist lower ranked candidates over higher ranked candidates if we rank them originally on the expectation of their quality. Right? That's the story. All right, that's the point. That's the point. Now what I'm going to do is go through 6 objections. And I think some of these objections are sort of, you know, interesting in the sense that they bring out some good sort of modeling problems, all right? Now the first thing that I get when I tell the story is, yeah, that's all cute, if I even get that. But that's all cute, but you know, that doesn't make any practical applications. I mean, that's a cute modeling exercise, but you know, who cares, right? Now, I tell you, where this idea came from was actually a meeting, a shortlisting meeting, and we were wondering who to put in spot 5 on our shortlist, all right? And at one point, one of us said, the man has a higher expectation, the woman has a lower expectation, but her variance is greater. Let's put the woman on the short list. So that's where it came from. I mean, it was just a straightforward, real-life thing. She went on the short list, all right? Now, if you say, well, why is it the case that this would protect PC candidates, that this would benefit PC candidates? Well, I sort of haven't gotten my head around this completely. But let me tell you what I do fully understand, I think. Look, you're an all-white male bull, all right? And you're looking at these candidates, and there is your Eton boy. Yeah? Eton is his public school. Right, there is your Eton boy. And you look at the CV and you go like, oh, okay, got grade so-and-so from Mr. blah, 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 and you know what everything means. You say to yourself, that Eton boy, that looks like an A to me, right? Now you get a CV of somebody who comes from the other side of the world, protected category, whatever, And you look at that CV, and you go like, oh, this doesn't make much sense, you know, this is kind of interesting, and so on, right? So you sort of look at it, and you have a sense of uncertainty. You don't know where to go with this. Look, a PC candidate typically, not always, but a PC candidate typically has greater variance than a non-PC candidate. So they benefit from that greater variance. So you're going to get real life occasions where you say, look, you know, the mean isn't that great, the expectation isn't that great, right? But the variance is greater. That's one thing. There's another thing that I don't understand so much, but you know, we all know the story about, you know, well, there's bias against PC candidates. Then there is also this thing that when PC candidates actually interview, and they did experiments with this. If you let it be the case that they don't have to reveal their identities, they actually do better. If they have to put their name down and it's clear that they're from a lower caste or whatever, they do worse. It's sort of an anxiety element, right? Now, if you think about the econometric story, right, what is the assessed value? The assessed value is the true value plus a bunch of error terms, right? Now, what goes into these error terms? Well, what goes into these error terms is maybe the person was sick while they were interviewing. Well, that goes just as well for PC as non-PC candidates. But there are things that go into these error terms that are really specific for PC candidates. Was there anxiety about being identified as a PC candidate? Was there bias? That's where the PC candidates may be coming in with those error terms, right? Now I say maybe because some of them they won't experience this anxiety, or there won't be any bias from the board against them, and so on. So what you get for those error terms for the PC candidates is actually a certain amount of variance. That variance is going to go into the assessed value, right? So that's the second way to read this problem, or to read this response to the objection. PC candidates typically have greater variance because it's harder to read their PCs, and because it's harder to read their CVs, all right? And they have greater variance because these error terms start kicking in, of bias and anxiety and so on. And the variance of these error terms is going to kick in, and it's going to give us variance in the assessed value. Okay, so that's, pitch for practical relevance of this modeling exercise. Objection 2. This is all fine for shortlisting, but it doesn't have anything to do with the appointment stage. All right. I grant you that, all right? I set it up here for shortlisting, so you could say this is really, really, minimal relevance, right? But look, what happens at appointment stage, right? Well, suppose it's the case that all the appointments you're making are just temporary, right? They're just temporary, and you say to these people, okay, come and work here for 3 months, and then we're going to do a bit of a call. Some of you are going to be able to stay, but most of you are going to walk. Okay? It's not uncommon, I think, in the Belgian context to have that sort of procedure, right? Now, of course, what is that? Well, that's basically just dragging out your interview for 3 months. All right? That's just dragging out your interview. I mean, you're back to the same problem. All right? Now, of course, in the real world, there is a continuum between shortlisting on the one hand, and on the other hand, hiring a candidate, and that candidate will be with you for the rest of your life. Right? I know. It's a continuum between that, right? Now, when we're here, like you hire a candidate, that candidate will be with you for the rest of your life, then my argument doesn't apply. But anywhere on this continuum, my argument, applies less and less and less and less and less. All right? So if you're talking about a position which is such that, yeah, come and work here, you can stay for 3 months, and then we'll take a good look at you, that starts looking like shortlisting, and this becomes relevant. All right? All right. So, third objection. So somebody might say, look, if I was an employer, D, E, and F, what if they're all 7s? All right? I'll play it safe, all right? I'll put one of those 3 in there, one of those 3 A, B, and C's, and then 2 of D, E, and F's. Because with A, B, and C, I'm sure to have an 8. And then I gamble a little bit with my D, E, and F, and I take 2 of those, right? You always assume there are epsilon differences between these things, right? So you can make up your mind, or otherwise you have to flip a coin. But that's what I would do. I would, take this kind of insurance strategy procedure. Look, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I understand. You're a little bit risk averse. I fully understand that. But still, the point stands, all right? I mean, you're throwing D and E in there, whereas the Equality Act tells you that it should be A, B, and C, right? So if you put A, D, and E in there because you want to have the insurance of A, yeah, okay, I understand. You're a bit risk averse, that's fine. But the thing is that you still are violating the Equality Act, and you say, I want to get these D and E's who have a lower mean, who have a lower expectation, right? Now, if you do that kind of stuff, that insurance strategy business, that always costs you something. Because now you can calculate a little bit, what is the expectation of the quality of your hire? When you do that, remember it was 8.26 before, it goes down to 8.19. Yeah? Not so fast, all right, start calculating, that's where you'll get to. Okay? Good, objection 4. All right, here is what one of my colleagues actually said. He said, look, why do you rank according to the expectation at shortlisting stage? Yeah? Just say, look, I'm a bit of an optimist, I'm a bit of a risk taker, right? So I'm not going to work with the expectation, I'm going to work with something else in order to rank those candidates. And then once I got them all ranked, then I can just peel them off into my shortlist, right? What's the problem with that? And it's interesting because there is a literature that does precisely that. There's Quiggin's rank-dependent expectation. There's a lot to be told here, but really, in our case, the only thing you have to think of is you look at your credence function, 7, 8, 9, what was it? 0.10, 0.7, 0.20, right? And what you're going to do, because you say, hey, I'm just at shortlisting stage here, we can take some risks, ta-da. You're just going to overweight the 9. You say, I'm going to pretend this 0.20 here is really 0.25, right? And you're going to underweight your 7. You say this 0.10 here is really 0.05. And then you do your calculate your expectation with these adjusted values, and these are the numbers that you work with. All right? Now, my colleague's point was, look, if you do something like that, then you don't have a problem. Because when you overweight your 9s and you underweight your 7s, then your expectation or your rank-dependent expectation will come out not anymore at 7.9, but you push it to 8.1, and that's greater than 8, and so you take D, E, and F, and fair enough, you satisfy the Equality Act, right? All right, that's pretty clever, right? Now, there's another way you could do this. So you look at the quality of your candidates, and let's suppose they have some kind of Gaussian here, right? I mean, now we just do it as if it's a continuous variable, your quality, and you just say, take off the right tail, so you got 0.05 in here, right? And then take this value, all right? Take this value here, and let that be the value that you're going to use in order to rank your candidates. Well, fair enough, you can do that. If you do something like that with our discrete case, what you're going to get is also a measure which puts your D's, E's, and F's up, and as a consequence, you could say, look, I'm satisfying the Equality Act. Fair enough. You can do all of that, and you can get out of the little problem, the toy problem that I gave you. But you can't get out of the big problem here. Why can't you get out of the big problem? Because when you do these kind of evaluations, right, they're very holistic. What do I mean by that? take a bag of potential candidates. I'm not even going to say these are candidates. These are potential candidates. Okay? Here's your bag. And I say, give me A and B. Yeah? Now the idea is, give me any measure, and I tell you who is better, A or B. Right? Okay? Construct any measure, put A over B, or put B over A on that measure. Here are all your potential candidates. You can construct an order. Okay? Now, next thing, what's going to come up is that you say, oh yeah, these are potential candidates. Who are the real candidates? Yeah? Here's what I can do, following my procedure, right? I can take two sets, S and S prime, of real candidates. Yeah? They come from the potential candidates, but here is a set S, here is a set S prime. Both of these sets have A and B in here. Yeah? But if I follow my procedure, or any of the suggested procedures, here's what can happen. In S, A over B. That is, in the set S, A gets shortlisted, but B does not get shortlisted. In the set S prime, B gets shortlisted, but A does not get shortlisted. It just flips. All right? Or you can do the following. Suppose that we have more or less money to do the interviewing. So the length of the shortlist will be different. Now, give me one set of candidates. A and B are in there. Right? Now, I say shortlist of size 2. A will be in the shortlist of size 2. Shortlist of size 3. A is no longer in the shortlist of size 3. Yeah? So, whatever you do in the way of using one measure or another, if you're interested in the expectation of the quality of the hire, if that's what you want to maximize, if that's your objective function, then it's going to be the case that it's all dependent on the actual set of candidates who makes it into the shortlist and who doesn't. You can't just say A is better than B, so whatever the set of candidates, if it contains A and B, A should be in there and B shouldn't. Or they both should, they both shouldn't. You can flip. In set S it can be A is in, B is out. In set S prime it could be B is in, A is out. Depends on the other candidates. And furthermore, it depends on the size of the shortlist. A may be in for shortlist size 2, but A may be out for shortlist size 3. Yeah? If you care about the expectation of the quality of the hire, right, then your judgment will be holistic, and you cannot construct a ranking of the potential candidates which is such that you can just look at that ranking and then peel off the top 5 and put them in your shortlist. It doesn't work, right? You could say, fill that in. It can give you stories to fill that in. But, that's a lot of calculating we would need to do. All right, good. Objection 5. I think we're okay, right?
Yeah.
Another 10 minutes? All right. Good. Here is set of where, I started getting excited about a bit more theoretical stuff. So, suppose somebody would say, yeah, you looked at that objective function of maximizing the expectation of the quality of the hire. It's fine as an objective function. You looked at an objective function that has an insurance strategy built in. You want to maximize a bit, but you also want to have a bottom, right? That's fine. But suppose I would say to you, look, the only thing that I care about is to maximize the chance of getting a best candidate. I'm saying a best candidate because if there are two best candidates equal level, then I don't care which one I get. Okay? So suppose you care about maximizing the chance of getting a best candidate, right? Then what are things like? And I thought to myself, that's kind of interesting. Is there any difference between doing that and maximize the expectation of the quality of the hire? maximizing the chance of getting the best candidate. And the interesting thing is that there is. Yeah? It's a very different thing to do. And this actually goes back to Moore and Railton. And they both believed that that was called, that was the way to make choices. And it's called objective consequentialism. You should maximize the chance of doing what is right rather than the expected value, rather than maximizing the expected value of your action. So that's what you should do. This is just in general as a moral principle, and here is how it applies to hiring candidates. So okay, that's interesting. First thing, start calculating again. All right. If you want to maximize the chance of hiring the best candidate, got a bit of work to do to calculate. But let me tell you, who goes in the short list in A, B, C, D, E, and F? D, E, and F again. Yeah, it's not that different. That it's still the same story. You still get D, E, and F in there. All right. But there's an interesting thing that came from Jackson, and it's called the nearest and dearest objection. And the nearest and dearest objection was meant to show that objective consequentialism is stupid. All right? That you should just not do this, maximizing the chances of getting a best candidate, right? And of course, they did it in the context of more theorizing, right? But it just transfers very nicely. So here is Jackson's nearest and dearest objection as applied to the context of hiring. Yeah? Suppose that you can construct a short list of 2 people. That's the money that you have. There's 100 candidates, and 98 of the candidates have a 0.10 chance of being a genius and a 0.90 chance of being a phony. Right? That's what 98 candidates look like. 2 candidates are in the pretty good range. 0.5 chance of 8 and 0.5 chance of 9. Who are you going to put in the short list of 2 people? These guys, of course. You're not going to take your chances on those phonies, for heaven's sake. Right? Nonetheless, with 98 candidates, and there's independence. Okay, there's independence in the picture. With 98 candidates of this nature, yeah, there's going to be a few geniuses there. So if you put those people on the short list, your chance of getting a best candidate minimum. Right? And Jackson actually does it by making this anti-correlated. So you're sure there's some geniuses in there. All right. Well, his example is completely different. It's a Jill example and it's a medical example and so on, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the nearest and dearest objection. In your short list of 2, these 2 candidates should go. That's just straightforwardly what you do. That's what your expectation tells you to do. But if you say, no, I want to maximize the chance that I'm getting a best candidate, you should take 2 of these. And that just seems plain stupid. All right? So then I got interested in this thing of, is objective consequentialism always stupid? Yeah? And so I thought to myself, well, let's take the simplest case, really. Let's suppose that there are 2 choices. There are 2 choices and 2 boxes to choose from. Yeah? And in one box, what you get is 10 million. Maybe. And the chance that there's 10 million in there is X. Okay? And in the other box, there may be less than 10. There may be money. And if there's money in there, then it's less than 10 million. Yeah? So we say B times 10 million for B between 0 and 1. Okay? And the chance that that amount is in there is 1. Yeah? That's the chance that there's money in this box, and the money is always going to be somewhere between 0 and 10 million. Here is the chance that the 10 million is in that box. So we got box A, and we got box B. Right? And now what we can do is, we transpose this, of course, to candidates. This candidate is either a 10 or is a phony, 0 or baseline, whatever you want to do, right? With chance X. With chance Y, this candidate is also baseline, with chance Y, this candidate is somewhere here, okay, somewhere at this level B, or baseline of 0. Same thing, same thing. So I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. Now what happens when I look at the expectation of choosing A or B, or when I look at the probability that my choice is A best action, right? Of course, if they're both 0, then both of them are fine. But if one is 8 million, the other one is 10 million, I take the 8 million, then I didn't take A best action, right? So, we can just use both of these procedures. What would you do, right? I was wondering, are there any cases where are there any cases where these two procedures overlap, right? And it turns out that here is the value x, here is the value y. I took beta as 0.5 because I thought that was the only hope I was going to get to have both procedures overlap, right? And it turns out that whatever you do with the beta value, the b value, yeah, whatever you do with that b, yeah, they never overlap. Well, they never overlap. Whenever it's colored, they overlap. Yeah? But there's always a little sliver somehow on which the procedures flip around. So if you're in this the white space here, then one procedure would tell you big box A, the other procedure would tell you big box B. All right? And I thought that was kind of interesting. So now, of course, the challenge is, and we're pretty much there, is to characterize what the nature is of this space here. Because this space will start changing. Here's interesting. This is for beta is 0.6. Okay? 600,000 in there. And what you always see is that if beta is 1 minus x, right? So put x at 0.4, beta at 0.6, look at this thing. You got a colored line going all the way through. That's when they overlap. That's when you're sure they overlap, because at all the other spots they overlap too. But so you can do these characterizations of when objective consequentialism and subjective consequentialism are supposed to overlap. What does this have to do with affirmative action? That was a little shine show. Right? I thought it was interesting. Okay, this is the sort of thing you start thinking about working on those things. Okay. All right. Last thing. Leave 15 minutes for discussion.
Yeah, we still have like 5
Yeah,
minutes.
okay. Okay, that's my last objection anyway here. And this is really an objection for the moral theorists, right? That is, you could say, yeah, that's all nice and well, but if I'm candidate A with my 0.8 if I'm candidate A with my expectation of being an 8, yeah, I can see that it makes business sense for the employer to put candidate D on the short list. I can see that. But my rights have been violated, right? Because I'm the better candidate. Yeah? So is there a rights violation in this? And you could ask yourself, if you're a libertarian, you could think of sort of, okay, if your employer is a little bit of a do-gooder, is interested in social causes and this and that, and puts PC candidates above non-PC candidates because it would be good for the world. Yeah? The PC candidate, the libertarian PC candidate will slam his or her fist and say, listen, business, okay? Friedman, right? The only thing you're allowed to do, right, is to take care of your business. None of your business to do good. And for that, we got politics, all right? Businesses should not do this. Oh, fair enough, fair enough. But the thing is, your employer is going to say, yeah, business is business is business. I'm not putting you on the short list because I care about getting the best hire, all right? So, this kind of argument just doesn't work, right? So then I was thinking about, this is a case that goes back to Dworkin. So Dworkin has this thing where you got two people, and they're both at this level in the company, X and Y, right? And now all of a sudden, there is this job opening up here, right? Or there is this job opening up here, right? And who's going to get it? Well, X is the better candidate to get the job than Y, right? But the employer sees that X is really crucial at this level, and Y is not crucial at that level. So the employer says it makes business sense to put Y there. Is that permitted or not? Yeah. Now I think X could say, I'm the better candidate, you should hire me. Okay, fair enough, I can give you that, right? That's against business sense. So sometimes these arguments do work, but I don't think that they work here. The reason that they don't work here is, what are you going to say when you're A? It's not like you don't have a grievance on grounds of your qualifications. You can have a grievance on grounds of your better qualifications. That you can have. But you can't have a grievance on grounds of a particular feature of the credence function of the employer, namely the first moment. Don't look at the second moment. The grievances don't ride on features of credence functions of employers. They have to ride on your actual qualifications, right? So I think this objection just doesn't work. There's no rights violation here. A, B, or C have not been done wrong. All right. So, summing up, business sense, follow procedure that maximizes expected quality of hire, which may require shortlisting worse over better candidates, worse in terms of expected quality. That's going to favor PC candidates. Yeah, so a straightforward libertarian argument for affirmative action. Makes business sense to do this. It's relevant at appointment stage as well, not just at shortlisting stage. If you think about sort of hiring people in internship type situations where you can call afterwards, probationary period. Insurance strategy, I can give you that, but the point still holds. I told you that you can't just rank candidates and peel them off for shortlists. It doesn't work like that. The evaluation is always holistic. It's relative to a set of candidates, relative to the size of the shortlist. We talked about objective consequentialism. Seems like a pretty stupid thing to do. There's interesting questions about subjective or objective consequentialism in very simple cases where sort of advice doesn't give you. But even if you want to be an objective consequentialist, you're going to get the same thing. D, E, and F will go into the shortlist. Bit of a different calculation to do, but gives you the same thing. These things are not that different. And there's nothing unfair about it. So, okay, thank you.
Comments, questions? Yeah, Larry?
Yeah. I missed the beginning, unfortunately, but it just struck me that, okay, if you are really objectivist or libertarian, well, shouldn't the employer hire whoever he wants? I mean, why should the candidate have any possibility of freedom from the libertarian standpoint?
Yeah. There's no objection to the employer saying, I like the only candidate with blue eyes, right? So, what is the problem with that, right? I mean, it's the employer's company. No reason no reason to put on any kind of constraints, right? You know, I think you'd be a libertarian who's going to be to the right of Milton Friedman and so on, right? I mean, I think what one would need to say is to put some kind of liberal constraints, right, on your libertarian, and say something to the effect that, you know, look, in running your company here, you're dependent on a lot of services of the community and so on. And we put, you know, the community put certain constraints on how it is that you're going to run your business, right?
Okay.
And these constraints should at least be something like, you know, we don't want to see just win here, right? We want you to run your business in an intelligent way, right? That could be one way to go. But actually, it'd be an easier way to go. You as an employer, you know, well, let's suppose that you're self-employed. This is just, you know, the family business, you do your thing, right? Then maybe we can go this route. But, you know, what a Friedman would say is, look, you've got a responsibility to your shareholders, right? And your responsibility to your shareholders is to do the best you can do for this company, right?
Okay.
So I think that's actually the straightforward way to run it, easiest way to run it. And then if you want to say, it's just me, there are no shareholders, right? But then we can go your libertarian route.
Okay.
Or we've got to do something like with liberal constraints. Yeah.
Okay, John.
Can you take me quickly through your when you dealt with your model not being relevant at the appointment stage? You were saying something about how, well, the argument applies on this continuum, but once we get to the end of that continuum, it ceases to apply. And that was to do with at the end of that continuum, that was when you were actually appointing the candidate. Is that what you were saying?
No, yeah, see, the thing is, I mean, I'm imagining, this is when you do short. I mean, here's my continuum, right? On this side, what I want to say is shortlisting business. Yeah, uncertainty now, tomorrow we're going to figure it out with the interview, then we make our decision, right? And then I'm thinking about, you know, what should I say, hire a professor in universities, right? If you make a mistake, you're stuck with them for the rest of your life, right? So, you know, no probationary period, right? I mean, you got to pick your best candidate, yeah? And you're going to be stuck with that person for the rest of your life, right? There, my argument doesn't apply, yeah? Because what I would do is go for the 8 rather than the 7.9. Yeah, I want to maximize the expectation of my hire, and the expectation of my hire is exactly the expectation of my candidate. Yeah? So there, my argument doesn't apply. But then I'm thinking there are many cases in between where, you know, you say, look, I'm going to hire 3 people here, and then they're going to go through tenure proceeding, or they're going to go through a probationary period, and then we do a little call, right? Now, if I set that up in such a way that I'm going to keep 1 or 2 or whatever, right? Then I have exactly what I have here. The only thing is that when I kick them out after the probationary period, I can't just go back and say, I'm going to try you now, right? Because that other person may be gone in the meantime. Yeah. But if it's the case that, you know, the market is saturated, right? These people are going to be there tomorrow anyway, then I'm just like in my shortlisting. So as I move from here to here, the model sort of, you know, becomes less straightforwardly applicable, and it's going to become more and more complex. But when I get all the way here, and I care about the expectation of the quality of my hire, well, that is the expectation of the quality of my candidates.
Right. But part of what your argument requires is that there's this uncertainty of these lower ranked candidates.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking was that, in a sense, whenever you're involved in in hiring or appointing, for that matter, you're hiring somebody to do a job in the future. So you're always sort of banking on that their past or that their future is going to look like their past, right? So it seems to me that your argument is always going to apply because you're always going to have some degree of uncertainty in whichever scenario that we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. No, I agree. Look, I mean, what is the real world like, right? What is my model like? In the model stage, I say, this is what we have at shortlisting, right? And then all of a sudden after the interview, right, we're going to know that this person is exactly there, right? That's how the model works, right? Now, in the real world, what happens is, this is what happens at shortlisting stage, and this is what happens at hiring stage. Okay? Just the variance has gone down a little bit because I learned something during the interview, right? But I still have uncertainty at the hiring stage. But at the hiring stage, I start looking much more at my expectation because I don't want to take those chances. Unless I have tenure coming up 6 years down the line, then I'm willing to take some chances. Yeah. But of course, that is once again as if I'm shortlisted in some way, right? So that's the thing. But I realized that, yeah, this is future performance. We don't know what's going to happen. The best we can do really is reduce that variance, right? But I thought for the modeling exercise, it's a good thing to do to say, look, shortlisting, uncertainty, and then hiring, I have certainty, right? But of course, in the real world, shortlisting has a lot of uncertainty, hiring has less uncertainty. So the argument is going to kick in much more here than it's going to kick in there. But that's sort of, spirit of it.
Dear.
Could your idea, if it would become the common procedure for procedures to hire a candidate, would it not backfire? Because if this would become the standard procedure, all candidates would try to maximize their perceived variance. So the CVs would become more and more obscure and less readable, so that all candidates would have very large variance, so they could get into the shortlist.
Right, that's great. Yeah. Okay. I mean, of course, you got to be careful, right? I mean, because your real quality is this, right? You start messing up your CV. This is what you look like, right? It's not going to do you any good.
Not necessarily. If it's a job you think you have a chance for, but there might be other candidates, your strategy would be to obscure your CV so that your variance is larger and you can maybe pass over the objectively better candidates.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. I think this is a strategy that's being played on the marriage market, actually. There's something to being that sphinx, No, I mean, it's just creating that sort of uncertainty about yourself, right? But yeah, no, that's interesting. I'm not sure that we don't do this to a certain extent. I mean, there's certain features. I mean, especially if you're working your CV, something's really not such a big deal. Keep it vague, because then you can get, it's open for a lot of interpretation.
But another point, or another argument against your model is that if you have a vague CV, you can have the assumption that maybe this candidate is trying to keep it vague on purpose because he's actually a bit lower and he wants to.
Right. Yeah. So it's going to turn all game theoretical, right? Yeah. No, that's
And if
interesting.
you're having a CV which is very clear and very easy to assess, then you're a bit more assured this value is probably.
Yeah. But that's, there's something of the analytical philosopher talking in you too, right? Because, it's in the clarity that the goodness comes, right? Now that's of course, the clarity in and of itself becomes one of the features that goes in, that needs to be aggregated into your overall, right? So no, I do see that. Yeah. I mean, my response really would be that I think, your point is well taken, but I think we already do some of that in doing applications. Right? And I think the employer already knows that we're doing some of that. Yeah. Oscar Wilde did, but we will keep that out of the public debate. So, okay.
Matthew.
Well, so you're imagining we have a prior necessarily using the prior, what's the prior probability distribution. Okay, that seems very fair, but but you could just like use the whole processing step then, take into account what you might learn. I mean, if you did this, for instance, if you had the example with a bunch of people who had 10% chance of being 10s, and then you had some people that were certainly 8s, right? And then you've got room for 2 people. So you've got essentially 3 decisions. You can have 2 potential geniuses, you can have 1 potential genius and a certain 8, or 2 certain 8s. And you said the only good thing to do is to take 2 certain 8s. But in fact, if you have 1 potential genius and 1 certain 8, you get a higher expected utility on average in the final stage to use that as a strategy.
Yes, no, that's true, right? I mean, once you get a certain candidate, so you have an 8, and then you have a 10 and a 0.
Yeah,
So the
one who
genius
had
and phony
yeah.
situation, right?
Yes.
So what shall we say? 0.90 and 10.10. Should we say that?
Mhm.
And we can have 2 of these, let's say. Yeah?
And then you can have 1 of each, which is the optimal position in this case.
Yeah. Right. Okay, in that case, you'll do this and this, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Right? Now, if you start playing with those numbers a little bit, it might become the case that you take 2 of these. Yeah, that's the D and F was like that. Right? I mean,
If the gain is, if there might be gazillions instead of.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what's going to happen, right? If I push this number up a little bit, right? Then at some point it's going to be I mean, first one step back. It's absolutely true that taking the 2 8s would be a stupid thing to do. You already have an 8 in your hands, right? So why go for the other one? So you do the 8 and you mix it with 1 of those, right? And with these particular numbers, that will maximize the expectation of the quality of your hire. Now, what I'm saying is that if you increase this number a bit, right, decrease this of course, then at some point it's going to be the case that you're going to interview those 2, and that you say forget those guys.
Yes.
Right? Another thing that's going to happen is that, give me 20 of those and give me 20 of those. And then it'd be the case that I can make a short list of 5 people, right? My short list of 5 people is going to have 5 of those in there.
Well,
And it's going to have none of these in there anymore, right? Because my expectation will be higher.
Well, you have to do the math in the
You have to
particular
do
case,
that.
but for many numbers you have 1 8 in there and then take the rest as gambles. because you
Sometimes, yeah. But I think if I can make my short list big enough, right, then it's going to be the case that at some point, just like with my D, E, and F case, at some point I'm just going to get 5 of those in there.
Yeah.
And if you then say, yeah, but then I'm really nervous, I'm going to get all phonies, then I say, okay, then you're an insurance strategy person. You're a bit risk averse, and put your
Yeah.
rate in there. Yeah.
But is that a problem?
If you want to run an insurance strategy, no, don't have a problem with it. If you feel like you're going to be a risk averse employer, I'm perfectly fine with that. The only thing, of course, that I want to say is that look, my point still stands, right? Because the Equality Act tells me that I have to put 5 8s in there, right?
Yeah, I guess if you interpret it as saying use expected utility using the prior beliefs.
Exactly, but I don't know how to interpret it any other way anymore, right? Because my problem is that I tried a couple of other ways. I tried the Quiggin stuff. I tried this kind of stuff. Right?
You can maximize the eventual expected utility. That would be the correct solution. Say problem from a decision theory perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I thought you were saying that maybe we shouldn't read goodness at the prior stage as the expectation of the candidate, right? Maybe you should read it differently. But then comes my argument that whatever measure you take, it's not going to work because the evaluation is holistic. Yeah? If you want to maximize the expectation of the quality of your hire, yeah, your expectation is holistic. Your procedure is holistic. What that means is that you can give me a ranking of all the potential candidates such that I can just construct my shortlist with that ranking. Yeah? It depends on the set of candidates. It depends on the size of the shortlist. Yeah? So that's that sort of holistic counter to.
One quick question from Gabriela, and we have to keep it short because the break time is about to start.
Okay, well, I'll tell you the same question of strategic.
All right.
Strategic
Can you speak up?
Sorry?
Can you speak up so that we can hear you
Yeah.
also on there?
I said that I had the same question of the strategic game as before, but I have another question, bit more about the positive action act. What happens if you have two candidates in the two PC candidates that are equally good, but they are in the PC, they are for different reasons, suppose religion and sex. Does the Act say anything about
Yeah, look, I mean, the Act says something interesting here. I gave you one condition. There's actually three necessary conditions, right? And the second necessary, it doesn't directly address, you know, the issue you're raising, but you see where I'm going with it. The second one says you cannot do it in a systematic way. So the employer can't say, I'm going to do everything for women, but not for anybody else, right? The employer has to take every case when there are equal qualifications at face value, right? Now, so you can't break through the tie by saying, you know, our company, we do good things for women. Look at us, right? You can't do that. It's not allowed, right? You have to take each case at face value. Now, I think the case you're describing, you know, what you need to do is flip a coin, right? Or is basically say, well, I'm just going to go with this guy because they're equal. But you can't always say, I'm going with the Muslim. You can't do that. Then you're in trouble. Then you're systematically favoring people. You cannot systematically favoring people. Yeah? So that's okay. Good.
Okay, let's thank the speaker.
Thank you very much.
We'll meet back here in 15 minutes, so 11:30, and feel free to bring coffee in. Just please try to reuse the cups.